that can affect the organization, viability, and profitability. How we plan, design, implement, and monitor and communicate on such systems is critical to the efficacy and efficiency, allowing the organization to maintain its strategic capabilities and goals. Designing the BCMS should follow international standards and should also be your selling point to partners, clients, and customers. Utilizing the ISO 22301 standard will help you to prevent disruptive events, prepare for unexpected events, guide effective response in crisis, recover from incidences. On that note, we have Dr. Redmond to deliver this wonderful webinar highlighting what the ISO 22301 is all about, and we offer BCM advisory and also professional consultancy services. And in addition to PECB ISO 22301 certified training to management and teams. Now, Dr. Redmond has an extensive background in business continuity, and I welcome her to today's webinar, and I do hope that you find it enjoyable and informative. Thank you. Dr. Redmond, please go ahead.
Thanks so very much. I appreciate that. So we're going to discuss today, hold on, let me make this on large screen. So ISO 22301 was updated. For those of you who have the old version, was updated. Every 5 years to 7 years, business continuity management updates. So we'll be talking about the recent version. A little bit more about my background. I have an MBA in international business, an MBA in risk management, which certainly covered business continuity management, an MBA in information security. The reason I bring that up is when you're doing your business continuity management, think about if you had a cyber event too. What if you had a denial of service? There are many organizations that have a denial of service attack or a ransomware, and they can't get access to their data for a period of time because the information security department and the business continuity didn't work closely together. If they had, the cyber would have made sure that the business continuity was backing up in such a way that if there was a ransomware attack in any way, what shape or form, that they didn't have both their backups and their production in the same cloud provider. Because if that cloud provider is attacked themselves, it may not be you, it could be your cloud provider, then your backups are also attacked. So having all of that separate, so it's great to work together because they'll have a lot of information on how you need to do this. So that's just information to add in there. I've been an instructor for ISO audits. I'm a practitioner. I have 4 years on active duty with the military, 18 and a half National Guard and Reserve. And again, this is related to business continuity. In the National Guard, we had to have emergency response plans, different than emergency management. We had to have every sort of plan, even for the offices. So what happened was when people don't know this, but when they were having, at least in a war situation, the personnel areas that would be handling everything would actually be going out with them with their records. So that's why the public, the HR groups, they're called Personal Service Command. They handle just for that one division, that one area. They will actually, when they're going out for war games and such, they have to go to the field with them and bring all those records with them. And everything has to be backed up just in case. So it's not just financial organizations that use it. It's not just banks that use it. It's not just manufacturing. It is everybody has to consider business continuity management. On the Command and General Staff College, we attended quite a lot on the civil affairs courses, but all of those also had a business impact analysis in it. So there's quite a lot. I'm very honored the White House invited me to a luncheon as one of the top women in my field, and that was a big honor for me. So a little bit more of my background. I've also taught business continuity management for 60 agencies in Nigeria. I have worked with one of the banks in Nigeria. on helping them. I've worked with large organizations in Kenya, in Angola. I've worked throughout Europe. I've worked throughout the US, and I've also worked in Fiji and other such countries. So quite a bit of everyone. And the common thing was this ISO 22301 makes it a common way of how you approach it. So a little bit about my books, Business Continuity Management. In the book is currently being sold in 35 countries, which I'm very, very happy about. But not because it's that the 35 countries are using the book. I'm happy that so many people are finding it helpful. I've had many organizations, including the PhD program at St. John's University, has made a required course just on my book. So every student must pass a course on my book in order to graduate. So it's really, I know that it's helping so many people. In the back of the book, there is a discount code. I have 16 hours of audio training. And if you're interested in the audio training or the quantity of books, you can always contact Carousel. They'll help you with that, including the audio trainings. If you want to purchase them, they can certainly work with you. Even if you don't buy the book, they can work with you on getting a slight discount to help with that. Mastering your work-life balance. We all need that. Balance is definitely for everybody in business. And Mastering Introduction to Cybersecurity is made specifically for business continuity managers, for auditors, people that are not strong in cybersecurity. It's not something they've been studying for 8 years, 10 years, but they need to know what are 10 different types of attacks that could happen. What are different types of malware? What's the difference between a zombie and a Trojan? What do these terms mean? Because when they have an attack and they want to talk to cybersecurity during an event, you have to know exactly what's happening to know how to do your recovery, how to do your planning. So they do work together. And it's interesting because the ISO 2701 cybersecurity has a requirement for business continuity management now in the update, at least for the cybersecurity personnel. But it interplays also with the HR as a requirement in there, etc. So there's a lot of playing back and forth. These are the audio trainings that I have out. If you're interested, just contact Karis, who's working on the webinar today. They can help you with this, and they can give you a discount on this. If you're interested in this, they can take your order for a large organization on these. The business continuity management is 16 hours. The COOP and COG is 6 hours. That's continuity of operations for government. And the introduction to cybersecurity is 6 hours. I recommend in an ideal world that you take the ISO 22301 course. It certainly includes much more than the audio training does by far. The audio training is 16 hours, where the business continuity management course, you're looking at 32 hours of intense training with a live instructor or a live instructor on through Zoom. Either way, it's live and you could be asking questions. I think it's better. I do recommend getting the audio training on the cyber series if you're in business continuity. And again, you can work through them and they'll be glad to order quantities for your company. So what our session covers: the determining the scope of the business continuity management system. Now, the difference between a business continuity management system includes a business continuity plan, or BCP. It includes your disaster recovery plan, DR. It includes the governance, risk, and compliance of those areas. So we'll go through that. Your business continuity management leadership, identification of risk, setting clear objectives, determining appropriate knowledge skills. Who should you have on your teams? It used to be when the organization was getting to lay somebody off and they said, oh, we hate to lose and they're such a good employee. Well, all right, we'll stick them in business continuity management. How hard can it be? Those are the companies that are no longer in existence. One of the things I'm most proud about is when I just graduated, I was working for a company and right after my 4 years in the military and took a job, and I was working consulting for different companies, And all 10 of the companies that I did business continuity plans for in the World Trade Center were able to recover within 24 hours. Now, it wasn't emergency management. I'm not saying that life safety was not a separate issue, but the business itself survived. All 10 of them were back in business within 10 days, within 24 hours. And I'm very proud of that. I've done business continuity during the situations such as the New Orleans when they were having their flooding. I'm also very honored to say that I was the attaché for a short, very short, I think it was 2 weeks or something. I was at the request of the president and the head of emergency management for Chile. I was the attaché for business continuity and area business continuity management systems to an emergency management to Chile from the US. So I worked 2 weeks. I met with all of their mayors in all the different cities. I met with the head of emergency management for Argentina, Peru, and worked with them on the communication processes, everything that we do in ISO 22301. So this is not just an extra job that you do on the side. This is not something that you don't have to have training in. This is not something you can learn while doing. It is a combination. So business continuity management involves planning and preparation to ensure the organization continue to operate in case of a serious incident or disaster. It's an international standard being used in over 154 countries. Why do you want to do this? Now, management's going to say, why should we bother sending you for training? Why should we bother doing this? Why should we bring people in to help you? Why should we be training you at all? Why do you need more people working on your staff? Why do you need qualified, certified people on your staff? You're going to tell them these three things. You're going to say CEO, CIO, CFO, because it will help us reduce downtime during disruptions. It's going to protect the organizational reputation, stakeholder interest, and it's going to enhance our resiliency and response capabilities. This is what you tell to the top executives. This is how you get your budgets. This is what they have to know. And this is what many of the top executives aren't aware of. And this is what they must know. These three things by itself would justify them making sure they have qualified people on their staff. So when you're determining the scope of your business continuity, people say, well, how long will it take to put together a plan? Well, how big are you? How many people do you have? What regulations do you have to meet? Are you just in one country or are you multinational? What environmental concerns do you have? Are you worried about hurricanes? You worry about volcanoes? Are you worried about earthquakes? Or are you worried about snowstorms? Probably not for most of you on the call, but I do know that this is an international call. So company size and complexity, legal and regulatory requirements. You know, what areas do you want to include in the business continuity? You don't have to do the whole organization. You can say, we're going to do business continuity first, just for the these key areas, because quite honestly, if you have a major disaster, marketing is not going to be marketing. They're going to be switching over to a public relations role when you first have a major disaster. They're not going to be out trying to sell and say, everything's wonderful, go buy our product. They will be doing public relations. You know, for instance, NatWest, when it's a bank, when they had their major fire and they were going to be out, it was bad. But another bank also had a fire prior. They got up and said, they put a commercial on public relations and said, because we had such great business continuity planning management system in place, we were up and running within 24 hours, but we never took a chance of losing your money. Your money was safe all the time. And if you had called our emergency numbers within 1 hour, we could have told you all of the money you had in the bank. We could have answered you. We had customer service people available in 1 hour after our major fire. Wow, impressive. And then they ended the commercial by saying, and when such and such bank had their fire, how long did it take you to get back your information? They knew it was a week. The bank was out for a week. So they did it. What a great way to do it. Or they could just say, how long would your bank take? So ensuring business continuity management aligns with business objectives. And I don't know how many of you on the call have a financial background, but after I did my first MBA, I went with used to be called a management, a master's certificate. You did it after your MBA, and it was 2 years instead of going back and taking another major. Today, they just call it a certificate. But they it was 2 years and I did it in trading and banking operations. So I have and I've worked for many financial institutions, many other types. But if you look at that for those who are in banking, do you have traders on your area? Do you have customers? I would hope. How do you deal with your call centers? All of that. So business continuity, I would definitely prioritize call center. Absolutely. Then Mark's going to make marketing happy. And you could have marketing create some scripts to add into the call center and have those pre-ready. Lots of things you can do ahead of time. So you want to make sure that leadership is critical to foster the culture. You have to educate. First thing, you must educate your C club, your CEO, your CIO, your CFO, your chief operating officer. Legal. They must know what's going on, why it's important. They will foster the culture for resiliency. You have a strong leadership essential for engaging all levels of an organization and making business continuity a priority. Part of that is making sure your business continuity manager has the opportunity to brief senior leadership on what's going on, or perhaps they're going through the chief risk officer or whomever, but that their information gets passed up. So the leadership establishes the business continuity policy. Now we're going to the BCM leadership, not just leadership of the organization. You have a business continuity manager for an organization, or it could be business continuity management director, whatever the title might be. Establishing the business continuity policy. The policy is the first thing you have to have. And guess who has to sign off on policy? Senior management. Because without that, if senior management signs off on the policy, then they're saying, everybody's reading, we have to do this. It's not an option. It's not just so-and-so in the business continuity department telling us we have to do this. No, this is the CEO said we have to do it. And I've been just that person that they consider. They don't realize, if you're not the CEO, you are the head of business continuity, or you're part of the team of business continuity. It's critical. So you want to ensure that adequate resources are allocated. Do you have the right money? Do you have the right people? Do you have a budget to continue if you need to? Do you have an emergency budget set up with the bank, perhaps a line of credit? If you are a bank, of course, you should have that, but not everybody on the call is in banking. You want to have somebody to advocate for you for continuous improvement of business continuity. One way of doing that is putting together a steering committee. And on there, you have facilities, you have legal, you have HR, you have all of the support areas, and they help become your advocates because they have to have planning. Don't think facilities is not worried about business continuity, or HR or security. They all need it. They don't have it. Probably even your data center. They may have a disaster recovery plan in place to recover the apps and such, but they may not have a disaster recovery, a business continuity plan if that department is affected themselves, that data center is affected. Now, where do they go? They may not have that in place, the personnel. So governance and BCM leadership refers to the system by which the overall direction of accountability is directed and controlled. Has an impact on the governance. You want to align with the strategic goals of the organization. You have to establish clear roles and responsibilities within the BCMS, including all of the team members. You have to have involvement of top management and steering towards continuous improvement. I'm seeing we have some things in the chat. Hold on. Sorry, let me see those are questions here. Uh,
No questions. No questions.
okay, fine. It just shows up as chat. Sorry. So, uh, we'll have time for questions at the end, I assure you. Involvement of top management in steering the BCM was continuous improvement. Commitment to BCM by leadership. So I want to skip some of these. So ISO 22301 says you must ensure integration of BCM into all the business processes. As I mentioned, you may want to do marketing after you do another area that you consider has to be up and running. But you know how you know that, which ones to do it on? You're going to have to do your risk and impact analysis and decide which ones need to be up first. Maybe marketing is extremely important to you for your organization. So you have to go through and do that for everybody and then decide which are most critical. But you can decide this is the area we're going to work on first. Continuous improvement. You want to support other relevant managed roles. By doing that, I put together a steering committee. I make sure that this way I can help everybody in the organization by having a steering committee. And when I'm giving my ideas out, I get ideas back from them. So regular review meetings to discuss the BCM performance. Leadership has to know what's going on. Some organizations don't meet with the leadership. With the top leaders, they may just do the reports and send them forward. That's still letting them know. You want to provide support for resources, training, and awareness programs. Awareness of business continuity is just as important as awareness programs in cybersecurity. You want to recognize and reward contributions towards initiatives. One way of doing that is simply sending out an email. Congratulations to facilities for getting their business continuity plan in place. Congratulations to facilities when we did our last recovery test, they met all of their objectives. Their plan worked. Thanks a lot, facilities. Wow. Somebody else is going to say, I didn't get that. Well, why not? Because you didn't meet your objectives. When you do it, we'll give it to you. It's going back to first grade. Everybody likes to have that little gold star to go home. Include objectives and personnel performance goals of the managers. So as a manager in business continuity, what do I need to do next? Do I want to take some training? Do I want to take a specialized training? Do I want to understand better how to do a risk assessment? Do I want to understand better how to write a policy? What do I need to have? And that's where, people such as us, we come in and we can do just a one day training on a particular type of thing. It doesn't have to be all of ISO 22301. You wouldn't get certified in it, but you would certainly have the area of training that you need. So identification of risk and the implementation. You have to do a risk identification. You have to ensure that you can anticipate and prepare. Well, risk assessment, impact analysis. These are potential risks that could affect the operation. That includes environmental risk. It could be anything, I would go worst case scenario, anything that causes the building to be out, anything that causes you not to be able to access the building. It could be civil unrest, you can't access the building. Anything that causes the data center to be down and you still have to manage. It could be an event where your data is not available because of a cyber event. So by thinking of those threats and the impacts that could happen, that helps think about the risk at the same time. Now we have those things. What are the risks? We don't have to worry about our data being down as in a cyber event because we keep all of our information for our backups 6 months, and those are kept offsite in a separate location, X number of miles away. So if we have a hurricane, our backups will not be affected, or they're backed up in the cloud and we have the information here on the servers, etc. But they're in 2 separate places. So that's less of a risk for you. So I'm going to let you read this. In the risk assessment, you want to make sure that you identify the risk analysis, risk evaluation. I know I'm covering this fast. This is a 40-hour course that we're covering in 1 hour to give you an introduction of what you must be doing to be compliant with ISO 22301. This is not about how to implement each one, because to do a risk assessment class for you, just the risk assessment under the ISO 22301 is over half a day. Just on that. The business impact analysis, you're looking at another half a day to almost a day of training. So you want to be able, and when you take the ISO, if you take the ISO 22301 class, through the PCB at least, they actually teach how to do the job, not just what you have to do. How do you do it? They'll give you some templates you can use. You can bring those templates back, recreate the exact same design in an Excel spreadsheet without having to buy expensive softwares. So I think it's a great course. I've done over 30 certifications through through PCB on different ISOs. And had I not taken the classes on, even though I've been doing them, those classes on how to implement them and what's changed, huge help. My organization used to say, we want you to take the classes because you come back with great ideas for templates and how we could expedite this process. Great. And so they were right. So business impact analysis, you identify the effects on the business. So what happens when you can't get access to the building? What happens when that building has been burnt to a crisp in a fire? But there's been no life safety issues. Let's stress that in this situation. Identification of critical activities. Which ones have to be up first? It could be in a financial institution. It might be, unless you have trading going on, which is shorter, could be 24 hours, 48 hours, 72 hours, 1 week, or 1 month average. So which ones can wait? So when you look at the risk in the systems, these are some of the risk, I'll let you read this, that ISO says you must consider. Some. And I ask you, when you've done your planning, which of these have you not included? Many don't include the supply chain risk. So you want to make sure you have strategies for mitigating the risk. You have to design your response plans. You have to have continuous monitoring and review and awareness and training. That is a must. Notice that is one of the 4 main strategies for mitigating risk is awareness and training. Ensuring the staff are trained to understand risk and their roles in responding to them. So the outcomes of a business impact analysis help you define which processes are most important, recovery strategies, how to conduct training, continuous review, and an update of BIA to reflect changing conditions. Steps for gathering would be gathering information through interviews, surveys, operational data, depending on your organization, analyzing the information to determine business priorities, and looking at the resources requirements that you need, not what you have. If you need an extra person on your team, you don't get them. That means either the quality of the work and the planning is not adequate, or your staff has to work the additional hours to make up for the additional person you need. Sorry, skip one. So you want to gather the information. You want to make sure you consider legal, regulatory, contractual, your dependencies between business areas, your financial and operational impacts over time. You know, I've had an organization say to me, well, if you come in as a consultant to do this for us, what would you include doing? This PowerPoint. There's not one step in here that we would not have to do to make you fully ISO 22301 compliant. If you just want a small business impact analysis, we could do that separate. If you want a risk assessment, we can do that. But if you want a full plan, then everything has to be done. So you can decide which things you're going to do in-house and which things you're going to bring a consultant in for. It doesn't have to be everything. You may say, we need them to help with our business impact analysis. We need them really to help with our risk assessment. So the outcomes of BIA help define which processes are vital, the minimum levels of staffing, recovery strategies. So when you're understanding how the business is affected, how it changes, I'll let you read that for a moment. But, these are important. You have to look at the BIA findings. When you develop the plan based on BIA results, that means you have to keep metrics. Those metrics would include, did you do a tabletop test? That's great. What were the results of the tabletop test? Did you do a static test where you just go through and verify the data and how correct it is and nothing's changed? Great. How many things were caught that needed to change? How many things do you think should have been caught that needed to be changed? Because there've been new operations, new things, and the people in the area didn't even recognize that their business continuity plan had to change. How do you conduct and test training to ensure effectiveness? How do you know it's working? Different type of tests, tabletop test, static test, live test, different types of ways of doing it, or a full test where you're actually bringing up your disaster recovery, your business continuity. It's, full round the clock. It's an international standard. There are 5 key objectives to anchor your business continuity strategy. We went through those 5 objectives before, but you want to understand the context, stakeholders' requirements. I'll go through those now. You want to evaluate your operation, your products, your services. What must be protected? Not what you would like, but what must be protected in order to keep operations going and keep the business alive. Who are your key stakeholders? That could be business partners. It could be the government. It could be regulatory personnel as part of your stakeholders, but also key personnel in the organization. I always recommend people that they have a RACI diagram. If you don't know what a RACI diagram is, you can Google it. It's an image, RACI, and it tells you who's responsible, who's accountable, who's consulted, who's informed. And you have to have all of that ready ahead of time so that you don't make a mistake when an event happens. You want to ensure alignment with your legal, regulatory, contractual requirements. If you bring a consultant in, they're not going to know what those are. You must know what your contractual requirements are, but that they should ask to speak with legal to find out. Legal should know a lot of this. So legal should be interviewed as part of the process. So you want to develop a strategy that can handle disruptions performing through risk assessments. What risks do you have? Where are you vulnerable? We go back to the story of the 3 little pigs. One little pig had a house of straw. They were vulnerable because the house wasn't very good. One had a house of one had straw. The other one had a house of, was it wood? And it also got blown down by the big bad wolf. But the house of bricks could not be. Their risk showed that they did not have as much risk because they built the house of bricks. They mitigated against the risk, and that was their strategy. The poor little fellow that had the house of straw, he never did his risk assessment. He never did an impact analysis. That's why his house got blown down by the big bad wolf. He didn't have business continuity management training. I don't know why they don't add that into the children's rhyme and story about this. I think it's a great way to teach children about business continuity from the time they're 2, but that's just me. So you have to have a risk assessment to understand potential impacts, develop strategies. You want a clear understanding of how to respond to an incident. That means checklist. That means recovery plans. Who's going to do it? Specifically, when are they going to do it? What are they going to do? Calling trees, how do you even reach them? Who do you have to let know that you're having an event? Who has to okay you going to a commercial hot site or your own hot site if you have one, or a warm site? Do you have a hot site or a warm site or a cold site set up for your data center? Do you have a recovery site for all of your personnel? Are you going to allow everyone to work at home? Are you set up for everyone to work at home? Do you have the bandwidth to allow everybody to sign in? Is your VPN set up properly so everybody can get in? Do you have multi-factor authentication so you know who's signing in from home? Now you got involved cybersecurity as part of that process. Bring them in. They're a resource. Use cybersecurity to ask some of these questions. So you're establishing incident response structures, recovery time objectives. When must you be up? You want to allocate resources. Well, actually, recovery time objective is when you like to be up. And this is saying the data center says we can do that. Facility says we can do that. Sometimes the business units have to realize they may have to change because it's just not feasible. I've had business units say, we can't change our recovery time objective. It's what we really need. Give you an example. I had a manager. I said, how many people do you have to have back and working in the first 24 hours, 48 hours, 72 hours? Because they did not have remote capabilities set up. They would have to physically bring people in to a new location and there wasn't enough space. How many do you have to have up in 24 hours? So I need everybody in the first 24 hours, everybody. I said, you can't do without one person. He said, absolutely not. I said, great. I said, can we set up a meeting with you and I and HR? He said, what? I said, we have to change the policy that says no one in your department is ever allowed to take vacation because you can't have anybody out. And I said, I'm okay with that from a business continuity view, but we need the policy in place. Do you want to set the meeting up now or would this afternoon be better? And he said, wait a minute. I could probably do without some of my employees for a week because they were allowed to take a week's vacation at a time. And I said, oh, okay, all right, fine. And we went through it that way. So I was quite willing to go to HR and say they couldn't take it off. Remember, you have responsibility. If they insist, you have to make sure the policies in the other areas align. You would have to go to HR with them and make it the policy that nobody in their area is ever allowed to have a day off, including sick days. Sick days will probably not be allowed, but something would have to come up in place how they have to work when they're home. Obviously, it's unrealistic, but it made the person think. So plan is only as good as its execution during an emergency, which is why ISO 22301 requires regular training and testing. I come into some organizations 3 times a year, 4 times a year. I come into the executive boards once a year, usually for 4 hours, and train the executives, not this fast, much slower, much on the things they need to know. How do they govern it? What do they need to know? How do they figure out what budgets to give you? How do they know what policies they should be approving? How do they read a risk and impact analysis? You say, well, they have business plans. It's not the same. They also have to see where somebody is saying, leave somebody back in 24 hours. Hopefully the business continuity manager pushes back. It's part of your job as the business continuity manager. That's why you are in charge. Regular review and update training materials. Improve performance and continuously improve. You under ISO 22301, if you were audited and you were certified, you would have to show surveillance audits every year showing the improvement. So you want to make sure that you set up a process to monitor and evaluate your performance. That's going to deal with metrics. And although it is related to cybersecurity, ISO 27004 metrics applies 100%. The processes apply 100% to doing the metrics for ISO 22301. So I do recommend purchasing ISO 14001. In the business continuity management course that PECB has, they will teach you how to do that. They pull from the other standards to tell you what you need to know. So you don't have to go out and buy everything. Actually, when you take their classes, you don't have to buy any ISOs because they include everything you need to know in the course. You want to keep records of every test you've done and incidents to inform continuous improvement. That includes tabletop test. That includes static tests where you're just reading your plans through to make sure nothing's changed. You want to schedule regular reviews and audits. People say, well, I don't want to have an audit. Yes, you do. Now, I make sure that audit is trained in my business continuity. Now, your auditors can go to become certified in business continuity ISO 22301 audit, which is very good for you. So that is something you'll certainly want to consider. But I think it helps every auditor, and I do both audits and consulting. I actually do certification audits too. I think it's helpful for every auditor to take the business continuity implementation class first, walk a mile in my shoes type thing. So they understand where the problems are. Then as an auditor, when they take that class, they can say, oh, wait a minute. I may audit this, but I have to look at it from this way. I may audit this, but I have to look at it from that way. How can I best help them? Your internal auditor under ISO 22301 is supposed to be helping you and they advising you. So think of them as a free person on your staff that you're not paying for, and they're there to help you. I'd like to bring an auditor in at the end of the risk assessment, the end of the impact analysis, the end of the strategies, to have them go through and say, especially for new organizations, have them say, oh, you missed this, you missed that, if they have an ISO 22301 understanding. By adhering to the objectives, you can cultivate any type of disaster. You can not only minimizes risk, but it sends a message of reliability and dedication of preparedness to your customers, your stakeholders alike. And many organizations say we are compliant. To be compliant, you can have a third party come in. I often come in and do compliance audits. And then I sign off. I use my certification number on it, signing off that I've done the ISO internal audit, because many organizations do not have an ISO 22301 qualified auditor inside. So I will come in and work with them. But in doing so, I'm training the auditor also on how to do the program. I encourage people to include a little bit more in the budget and include at the same time I'm doing the internal audit, allow them to have extra. It takes longer to train an internal audit while you're doing it because they're shadowing you. But if they're just watching you, they're not going to learn. So I put together a train the trainer program while I'm doing the audit. And you're looking at maybe another 20% in cost to do that versus bringing somebody in to train the auditor and then having to pay 100% cost. So the objectives, establish your objectives, minimize the probability, ensure resiliency, provide capability. You want to specify in your goals what your goals are, and that has to be based on strategy for the organization. You want to create performance indicators, metrics. How do you know it's working? And I take those metrics and I run them through senior management. Are these the metrics you want to be reported on, or there are other metrics you want to see? Because the worst thing is to collect all these metrics and then go in with metrics that are 3 months old and have you can't really do metrics in most cases, very, on everything that management wants to see, but they want to see something. So isn't it better to do the metrics on what they consider important and add yours in too? But don't miss out what senior management needs to see to be able to give you the resources, to be able to support this program. And you need regular reviews. You want incident response time reduction, recovery time objective, business continuity plans accuracy, stakeholder satisfaction. I have one client that I work with 2 hours a week, every week during lunchtime. Well, my lunchtime. So it's, I'm working. So we set it up as a lunch meeting. They're eating, I'm eating, but it's business. It's on part of a contract. So they're asking me, they're going through what they've done that week. And I advise them on what they need to do that they haven't thought about. It saves them tremendous amount of time. They're eating the lunch, I'm eating my lunch, we're having our meeting by Zoom. And I've had one client that has done this with me now going on 3 years. So we meet sometimes once a week, sometimes twice a week for an hour. Usually it's twice a week in the beginning. Sometimes when it's we're coming to an end of that process, then I'll suggest that we go to once a week for a while. So, but they sign up for so many hours and we split it out over a year. Most people do, at least 2 hours at a time, but 1 hour works perfectly for me, an hour here, an hour there. So, and that's better for them too. So clear documentation, how do you get feedback from everyone, including your teams? Are they happy? Are they not happy? ISO 2704, as I said, has guidance for evaluating information security performance and security management. I definitely suggest you do that. That's a requirement for ISO 2701, but it helps everybody in 22301 to do. That's the best one for metrics, in my personal opinion. And I'm certified in ISO 2704. And I use those metrics all the time in my business continuity management programs. So the ISO, by setting the clear objectives, you know what to monitor, you know what to analyze. So these are some of the objectives you want to have: protect against business disruptions, reduce the likelihood of reoccurrence, prepare for, respond, and recover from incidents. What are the importance of knowledge and skills? People don't keep metrics on that. That should be an objective. So what does your key personnel need to know, including your senior executives? What does HR need to know? I just did a program for large city, 42 agencies. And we did everything from HR for the entire city. I did the head of facilities for the entire city, head of asset management for the entire city. Because if they have an area, wouldn't it be terrible if they had a disaster and they said, well, we're going to have computers given by asset management, and asset management is down because they had a disaster and all of the equipment was destroyed? Do they have a recovery plan in place? So I worked at this from the city, and guess what? Many of these areas didn't. Things had to change. They all changed their policies, their procedures, and those policies went up to senior management for signature. Facilities, security. I met with everyone from their business continuity management, because your business continuity management plan can't work if your support systems are not up and running. So make sure you include those as part of what training they need to have. And I brought them in for basic training. You want to have make sure that you have in-depth knowledge of organizational processes, resource, and risk elements. Your legal and regulatory, the head of business continuity should be meeting with legal at least once a quarter. And my suggestion, a 2-minute phone call. Anything we need to know, anything changing, anything coming out. Theoretical knowledge, risk assessments and risk management, disaster recovery planning. What analytical skills do my staff need to have? What communication skills do they have? Are they communicating what they want to communicate, or is it confusing? What are leadership skills? Many people do a training with no slides. I've taught for many universities. I've taught for New York University, the master's program at John Jay. I've taught for the master's in cybersecurity program for St. Thomas Law School. I co-taught with a lawyer, but we included business continuity as half the class under what the lawyers had to know, because one doesn't work well without the other. So so I always find that slides help. Some people are visual. They need to read while I'm talking. Some people are auditory. They need to hear what I'm saying. Some people are kinesthetic, which is why I'll show the same information a different way, sometimes on a different slide, to give them a sense to feel it from a different point of view. So are you doing that in your communication style? Your leadership style, does it work? Does it foster a culture of business continuity? Does the rest of the organization want to support the program? What are some real life experiences for executing plans? What is the history of managing actual incidents throughout the whole history, maybe even 10 years ago? What did you do? Learn from those lessons. What did other organizations similar do? And if you have somebody with credentials in ISO 22301, please make sure that people know they have that. It's a big thing to have. So they need to have identified the gaps, continuous improvement, and know the role of management. Management needs to know what they're required to do. So we talked about the policy program. You want to develop a business continuity policy, ensure top management. We talked about understanding the organization. We spoke about designing strategies and solutions. We spoke about business continuity plan development. We spoke about implementations and operations. We spoke about performance evaluation, metrics, management reviews. We spoke about continuous improvement. We've covered a lot today in 1 hour. We spoke about the structured framework, ensuring that resiliency from disruptive events. And we have done a 1-week class in 1 hour. So if it seemed confusing, that's because you didn't get the other 39 hours of the class, and I consolidated it. So with that, we have a few minutes. I'd like to open it up to any questions. If you could ask the questions out loud, that would be great. Do connect with me on LinkedIn. If you have any questions, you can always send me a message through LinkedIn. It's the best way to reach me, but also connect with me on LinkedIn. I do post a lot. And with that, I'd like to open up to any questions.
Well, we have one question in regards to if the slides are going to be made
No,
available.
no, the slides are not
Right.
available. If they contract us to do work, we'd be happy to do that for them. But no, otherwise they're not available. These slides took me 6 hours to research and put together. No, they're not available. But thank you for asking.
Right. So I think one of the main questions that I really do have for you is there are varying professions or professionals that are looking at creating a backup continuity management plan or etc. So you have the, for the business continuity institute and etc. and so forth. Which one's the best for
Can't
companies
answer that.
to look at
Can't
to
answer that.
implement?
I have my master's certification from Business
I
Continuity
know.
Institute. Now, let me explain the difference. I have my
Right.
master's certification from Disaster Recovery Institute. DRI gives you a really good tool on now do this, now do that, now do this, after you have done ISO 22301, after. Because if you do it first, you don't understand the governance, risk, and compliance. And when I went into ISO 22301, after I had my master certification from DRI, I said, I wish I had had this first. This is what I needed first, and this is what's missing. They touch on it, but it's more. ISO 22301 covers the leadership aspects of it, the management of it. What do I need to do? The Disaster Recovery Institute, while it also covers good, and BCI, Business Continuity Institute, is good, and also in that it teaches you the now do this, now do that. But I think it's they each have a different aspect. But ISO 22301 is the only one that separates it out into governance, risk, and compliance. It is the only one that's being used by 154 countries based on best practices. And many of the people I know that are ISO 22301 came to me for my classes from the Disaster Recovery Institute or BCI classes, people I had met at conferences or such. And they said, I need to know this too, because this is going to take me to the next level. And some of those were auditors for KPMG or consultants for KPMG and Deloitte. And they said, I can't advise them on the steps. So they are 3 different animals. You can't say which one's better. It's based on the organization. I used to teach for the Business Continuity Institute. I prefer teaching the ISO 22301 because it's more concrete, it's easier, it's practical. Here's your checklist. And normally, just the standard, if you buy it, you're not going to get the same impact. If you take the class and the training, then you learn how to implement each one and you get the templates. I think that the reason I took 30 classes and paid for them through BCI, through PECB, is because They have examples of how to implement it. It's real life, hands-on thinking training. What do I do tomorrow? The idea of the course is when you finish the 40 hours, you should be able to go in on Monday and start implementing a program. Where with the others, it's made for you to, you're not going to be the manager with the others and right away, but you will be with the ISO 22301. You can take over. So I think there's a difference. And it's not to say the others aren't good. They are, certainly are. So that's a question that I can't answer because it's based on the organization's needs. But I certainly think that if you want to have a program that is meeting as internet, that's a standard, because GRI is a methodology, BCI is a methodology, it is not a standard. So it's up to what they consider most important, or practitioners do, but not necessarily the best practitioners. Where this is 154 countries of practitioners saying, this is what we need to change. This is what has to be in place. This is what's important. And I think that that by itself makes ISO 22301 extremely important.
I have a quick question,
Sure.
because we actually out of time. Do you see any requirement? We're here in the Caribbean, and obviously we have a lot of partners, this growing international relationships and so forth. Are you seeing a general trend where your BCP or your BCMS plan or framework has to be, let's say, if it's ISO, gets you more business, it gives you that sense of
Right.
viability,
I'm going to cut you
trust,
off
and
there.
etc.
You said a word there. So does it have to be? No.
Right.
Does it get you the added value of the trust and etc.? Does it get you that extra credibility? Yes. But is it a requirement? No. However, people's perceptions are they know ISO 22301. They know, wow, if they're meeting this and they're meeting a standard, because BCI is a methodology from BCI Institute. DRI is a methodology. It's not a standard per se. You can't say I'm compliant with this because there's nothing to be compliant with. There's no standard. ISO 22301, your internal auditors can actually deem you compliant, and you can put that we are compliant in all of your marketing letters. There's a difference.
Okay, wonderful. Well, I don't see any further questions from anyone. Are there any questions? Okay, there's no questions and answers. So, Dr. Redmond,
I might just have a question. Can we get everybody to just put a little thing in the chat? Did you find today helpful? Yes or no? And if so, just a little bit of give you everybody like just give me the first thought you have, a little thing in the chat. Anybody, just write. We won't go back to you by name. Just let us know.
yeah, so you have one person, as you can see, said it helpful. But based on the poll itself, maybe some persons are very busy, but
Great
you
information.
have
We got anything
Pedro,
else?
yes,
I'm gonna read the
communicating.
answers out. Great information. What else?
Good. Yes, it's helpful.
Yeah.
So out of the poll, I would say 50% definitely find that having the ISO or even some level of training will be beneficial for them. Because I think before you start anything,
Sure.
you should always have that level of awareness that is needed to move forward in a very
I just want to
effective
read. I want to
manner.
read this comment out. It was helpful. I think we need someone with more knowledge in the BCP in the organization. Yes, very helpful. Yeah, very key things. It makes a big difference. That's a great point. Where someone says we need someone with more knowledge in the organization. It doesn't have to be everybody, somebody. Yes, very insightful help. Great. I'm glad to get that because I want to know how today's webinar was, for them to do it. And yeah, so everybody that found it helpful, can you imagine this is 1 hour? Can you imagine if you had us for 39 more hours? Well, actually it's 40, it's
40
32
hours.
of this lecture. So, multiply today by 32 and you'll have what you would know if you took the actual class. I think that's important to state because that makes a big difference because that is there's a lot to cover. And when I teach through stories, and that's how people learn. It makes a big difference. By the way, my book on business continuity management, they put a thing on LinkedIn the other day on my page saying that it's the most borrowed book from the National Security Agency for the United States. And I know it's being used, my audio training, the similar on the book are being used in Lagos. They're used, this mother book is being used in Saudi Arabia. So it is being, I know that there's many organizations in the Caribbean that are using it. And the book is just a book. Imagine if you took the course. So, and I do encourage you, if you want some of the books, please, please let Karasek know if you want to, if you do want to take some of the audio trainings as an introduction, just get an idea. Let Karasek know. We certainly can work that out with you too, not for your people for training, but if you want them for just some awareness training for some of your executives, etc., we can do that too.
Right.
But that's not in lieu of, it's in addition to.
Okay, so we have all the necessary information here that we can contact persons. They're readily available to give us email at training@carriset.global. Any additional information is at info@carriset.global. Majority of them have our contact. So I'm hoping that this was a very insightful webinar that many can definitely understand that to create a BCMS system to put it in place, you really need to have the necessary background. You want to minimize mistakes. You want to have to be fulsome as much as possible. And I think based on what everybody said in the poll, you're looking at most probably maybe the second and third quarter, possibly fourth quarter, that we can have some form of training. But we will notify everyone just to make sure that we have the necessary numbers that we can carry out the training, that again, you can achieve your objectives. So again, everyone, thanks very much, Dr. Redmond.
Thank you so
We will
much.
speak
I
again.
appreciate it.
Okay, take care.
Bye. Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.